Have you ever followed someone on social media only to find out they're different than you expected them to be in real life? If you've ever wondered how to tell who someone really is, then I need you to stick around because that's what we're going to talk about. A while ago, there was a trend going around where hyper-realistic looking items were actually made out of cake. Some of the items were dogs, cars, but the most popular one were of babies. We can do this with food for sure, but the truth is we use what we see to draw conclusions about all sorts of different things. But maybe more than anything else, we do this with people. In fact, studies show it takes just 7 seconds to make a first impression. It makes sense why we do this. Our brains are like categories. We like labels. The faster we can put someone in a category or in a group, the less work our brains have to do. This is why people have always worked. This is the way that people have always worked. In fact, there's a story in the Old Testament of the Bible that talks about this very thing. A guy named Samuel was a prophet for God, which means God would speak to him and then Samuel would communicate God's message to God's people. God told Samuel there would be a new king and that Samuel was going to find him. So Samuel heads to that family, Jesse's family, to find the next king of Israel. Here's what happened. When they arrived, Samuel took one look at the oldest son and thought, surely this is the Lord's anointed. In other words, Jesse's son, Eliab, looked like he could be a king. This son had to be the one that God wanted. But the author of Samuel says, "But the Lord said to Samuel, do not judge by his appearance or his height, for I have rejected him." The Lord doesn't see things the way that you see them. People judge by outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart. The story goes on, one by one, Jesse brings out his sons, all assuming that they had to be the next king of Israel. And over, God tells Samuel, nope, not this one either. The story sums up what all of us have experienced at one point or another. What we see makes us draw a conclusion that ends up being completely wrong. The problem is, you and I do this all the time. We make comparisons, we size others up. We think that what we see or what we believe is the standard. It has to be right. But the truth is, God's judgment, God's standard is the only one that matters. And God doesn't make quick assumptions about anyone. Which leads to an even bigger question. Do you believe the image of God is there in the people that you dislike? That's where things get a little more complicated, right? See, what God sees is the bigger picture, and you are invited to see others the way that God sees them too. The thing is, we can make a judgment about someone and be way off, but we can also make a judgment about someone and totally nail it. That person or that group has gotten it wrong, has done something they shouldn't, has rightfully earned the label that they have. But then, even then, God sees something in them that we can't. What does God see? God sees that He sees that person as a beautiful creation and a person who was gifted the image of God. And let's be honest, that can be hard for us to accept sometimes. There's a passage from the book of Psalms, a book that is considered kind of a poetry or even songs that is found in the Old Testament that talks about this idea. This psalm was written by King David, the son of Jesse, who was chosen to be king after Saul. And he writes this: "You made all the delicate inner parts of my body and knit me together in my mother's womb. Thank you for making me so wonderfully complex. Your workmanship is marvelous. How well I know it. You watched me as I was being formed in utter seclusion, as I was woven together in the dark of the womb. You saw me before I was born. Every day of my life was recorded in your book. Every moment was laid out before a single day had passed. How precious are your thoughts about me, O God. They cannot be numbered. I cannot even count them. They outnumber the grains of sand. When I wake up, you are still with me." It may be tempting to read that and relate to what David is saying, because the same is true for us. God made us. God is with us. But here's the thing. Those aren't just truths that David wrote about himself to make us feel good about ourselves. Those things are true for every single person, even the people that we dislike, even the people we may not want it to be true about. In other words, knowing you're valuable to God is never meant to make others feel less valuable to you. All people were created on purpose and for a purpose. We might look at someone and see a bad decision maker, an annoyance, a frustrating personality, but God sees someone that is made in God's image. Everyone is someone and made uniquely in God's image. How do we begin to see others like they are made in the image of God? When it comes to our individual lives, we start where Jesus started, with love. Jesus tells us to love our neighbor. And these days, our neighbor can mean our actual next door neighbor or our global neighbor. Here's a couple of ways we can do this well. First, get to know your close by neighbors. Second, get to know your distant neighbors, maybe someone in a city over. Even more, the group identity we're invited to as the church is more unique than anything else we will ever get the chance to be a part of. When we work together as the church, we show the entire world how big God's love is for all of creation, and we get to participate in the work Jesus started here on earth. Remember, everyone is someone made uniquely in God's image. Living like that is true means looking to see God in each and every person that you encounter, no matter how different they might be from you, and how they look, and how they behave, and even in what they believe.